No, I have to. My my evil characters are very much influenced by what is happening around me and what my past, what is happening in the world right now. It's very much influenced by them, what's going on. I like to think of them as I take the worst characteristics from the worst and sort of and try to combine them. I don't like characters that are redeemable. My books, they may come off at first that they're socially acceptable and that, they've fooled somebody somewhere along the line, but they always lose out in the end. Well, most of the time.
It's difficult because sometimes if you make them too evil, um, it's you still have to make them believable.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
somebody can't say, "Oh, well, that would never happen." I mean, you have to give them enough humanity to fool the reader,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and 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 still make them not redeemable. To
I think it comes back to the whole charismatic thing. They have to be the type of character that they may be truly evil, but they have enough of the social graces or whatever to fool the majority of the people who aren't really interested in getting to know them at a closer level or a deeper level. They just accept them for what they see on the surface. And I think that's a problem with a lot of us. We accept the, for, well, example, politicians.
Mhm.
You accept them for what you see on the surface
And what you
instead
want.
of,
what
yeah,
you want,
you,
yeah.
you select what you want. You see what you want.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
aren't sociopaths one of the characteristics is that they're charming? Isn't that a
Yes.
personality?
Yeah.
Mm.
I remember reading somewhere they said, who was it? Somebody said that a villain never sees himself as being a villain. A criminal doesn't see
Oh,
themselves as being a criminal. They see themselves as being justified in what they are doing.
yes.
And they don't see themselves as bad. And I try to put that into the story into Sylvain because he believes that what he's doing is for the best for his people. Um,
Mhm.
and Bronwyn is just, batshit crazy. And he's using her to get what he wants, which I guess makes her a victim, except she's fairly nasty. I'm going to make sure that people know that she's fairly nasty. It makes me think I should write a scene in which she is really nasty. Thank you.
Write that note.
Well, I brought up in my
This
last
is how
book
I
too.
plan things, right?
I brought up in my last book the test that good cannot survive without evil. And there's always, I put somebody that I call,
Good
basically he's a
point.
watcher who looks to maintain what is good and that there has to be a balance. One can't outshine the other because they, the world sort of explodes if you don't have one or the other. Um, and in my latest book that I'm currently writing, I really emphasize that good cannot survive without evil, evil cannot survive without good. And that's where we are at a crossroads. We have to find that balance that we can accept.
So you don't imagine a world of just good.
It's not human nature.
Because if
You know,
somebody feels things are good, somebody is always going to try to take advantage of that.
it's a matter of perspective. You know, it comes down to it. The evil person always thinks that they're right, that they have the righteous cause. The good person feels the same way. So it's a matter of your perspective. Do you agree with the evil person because that fits your agenda? That fits your social makeup? Or do you agree with the good person? You know, and I don't think it's human nature for us to all be good
Mm-hmm.
because I have met some people in my lifetime who have been truly just awful people
Mm-hmm.
and they liked being awful people.
Mm-hmm. And then there's a definition of what is good.
Yeah.
And if that, I mean, Margaret Atwood's book, the Handmaid's Tale, they think they're being good. They're creating a Christian world in which you're living by Christian values and having children because it's part of that. But
Mhm.
if somebody disagrees with that definition, does that by definition make them bad? And does a good person have to inflict punishment? Yeah, you're back to the whole issue of humans are not meant to be good.
Hmm.
There's balance.
Do
Okay,
you
like
Do you
Wendy,
think
that's
that is a
good.
matter? Do you think it is a matter of the survival of the species? That perhaps evolutionarily speaking, if human beings were always good, then they would be unable, let's say, to kill for food or I mean, I don't know. It's just a theory, but that's how we got to where we are now as a as human beings because there's always that balance between good and evil.
Hmm.
I think killing
Well, I
food.
think human beings too, innately, they need a challenge.
Mhm.
If we don't have something to challenge us, life becomes extremely dull and we become either self-serving or we become impotent.
Mhm. And I think innately most of us want to do, for the most part, what is right, whether that's good or bad. But human nature being what it is, it's also, we are inclined to be lazy. And if getting what we need can be done by nefarious ways, then there is that tendency to want to do it. I mean, something as simple as I know I'm supposed to follow the speed limit. However, I may speed few times because I need to get to some
Mhm.
place at such and such a time. And a kid may want to do well on a test, but the pressure from the family says, maybe I should just glance over at that paper to see if I can get the answer. And don't let me talk to you about what I do with Wordle sometimes.
Aha.
Yeah.
Well,
Not having sleep.
somebody came up with the theory that if there is an overpopulation of males in the world,
Mm.
that's when wars break out because there's almost again, an evolutionary necessity to fight and diminish and balance us back out again. I've always been intrigued
Hmm.
by that. I don't know if it's true or not. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, but it's to keep everything in balance. The population in particular in balance. I mean, I don't know. Joe, why don't you jump in on this?
I haven't heard that. That's fascinating, actually, Um, I'm inclined to agree that human beings are built for conflict. Certainly in the Canadian system, you sure see that in Parliament. You see it in the courts. You see it it's baked into our institutions. I don't think that's a coincidence, right?
No.
So, there's a certain amount of headbutting going on in so many relationships. And I mean, even around the Christmas dinner table, we're arguing about politics or something. It's what I don't know what that is about us. I think, where do you draw the line? Like, is this just human nature or has it tipped over into evil? When does that happen? And I think to me, when you have gone into exploiting people, particularly for their differences, that is when you have got walked over the line. Because, like I just said, there's conflict baked into our institutions. This is how we debate good and evil, right? This is how we debate what is right and what is wrong and how to run a society. But when you start to exploit people, that's when you've crossed the line. I think maybe that's not quite all of it, and then maybe that's not quite the right word, but I think that's sort of where I'm at. And definitely, if you're doing it because that person is a lot weaker than you are. So in the case of The Handmaid's Tale, essentially we've enslaved all these women for the use of their bodies. Like, how much more heinous does it get, right?
Yeah.
That was bloody genius. Anyway, that to me is that is absolutely the depiction of evil right there.
Mhm.
She drilled it, in my opinion.
I think though, getting back, and this is just for the sake of discussion, there's always been a pecking order. There's been a pecking order in human beings. There's a pecking order in the animal kingdom. And so that in and of itself is the weaker gets picked over by the stronger. And if you look at that and go with what you're saying, Joe, which I absolutely agree, because it's the vulnerable then that gets down on that pecking order, that food chain, and is liable to be taken advantage of. Where does the line cross? So if you have a scale, if you have a list of 1 to 10, and the person number 1 is the most powerful, and the person number 10 is the most vulnerable, being weakness, where is, for the sake of our discussion, where is the cutoff? Do we cut off? Do we draw the line between number 4 and 5 and say, okay, if you are taking advantage of 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, then you're committing evil? Or is it against anybody? I think that's the struggle. Extremes, real evil is easy to recognize. I think subtle evil is that often takes time over years, and Handmaid's Tale kind of does that, as well as how they got into that.
Yeah.
Where is the cutoff? What defines true evil and not? Even if we're talking about those who are vulnerable. I mean, because I think our tolerance is different from person to person of what we're going to tolerate and what we call evil and what we don't. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, and as you were saying, though, the evil that builds up, it's insidious because it takes years, it takes decades at some point to build up and infiltrate the consciousness of the general public. And then it becomes a matter of, are you willing to accept this? Or are you going to do something to change it? And that's when the weaker have to join together. Like the people in the US, they're coming out, they're protesting, they're pushing back against ICE. The weak have to rise up. And you'll see that throughout history. It is usually the weaker, the most vulnerable, who have risen up to put a stop to what's going on that is truly evil. I very much believe in the silence is implied consent. If you don't speak out, if you don't do anything to bring attention to these actions of these evil people, you are as complicit as they are.
Yeah. What is that famous quote about?
They took away the Jews and I didn't say anything because I'm not Jewish.
That is also complete. That's absolutely germane too. It's a quote about how, it's when you get betrayed
If
by
you
your
don't
friend,
speak up.
you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. No, it's one thing to be abused by the abuser, but when no one speaks out on your behalf. So yes, similar idea. I don't know if we can grade it, really clearly on the 1 to 10 level. I think that's why we have these debates and discussions, and why it is a murky thing being a human race.
We would talk about ancient civilizations and Zanzibar, but I also talked about the 5 stages of discrimination and the 5 steps to genocide. That's what it was. And it starts out with prejudice and discrimination, and then it moves up to laws and the turning the other into the enemy. And in all societies seem to progress to that point where you go through just saying, well, they are not like us. There's Joe, I don't know if this is what you're thinking about, there was this very horrible 3-sentence statement that I would always put on the board. It was, you may not live among us as Jews. You may not live among us. You may not live